So that spotlight didn't exactly go how I wanted it to. The big change, of course, being hero perks, and if you watched my spotlight video before it went live, you will know that this is not the route I wanted them to take. However, it is the route that we're getting, and I am definitely not one to just give up and be all doom and gloom about it. I am going to give it a fair shot. And to be honest, just to see the reaction and the devs putting a lot of heart and soul into it, I am getting a little excited about the game changing in such a drastic way. It is cool to see so much new opportunity and stuff open up, and all the stuff on the horizon as well that's kind of in relation to it. I'm just excited. Even if I am extremely skeptical, I am very excited for what we're about to see. Now, with that being said, I am very skeptical still, and I think I will be for a while after they go live, especially because I've been enjoying Overwatch a lot recently, especially after coming back from Marvel Rivals. I've been playing a lot of comp, and honestly, I don't even do that very much. So I'm afraid that the game is going to change drastically to the point where I'm not going to want to play it, at least after a little bit. But those fears aside, I'm not going to talk about that too much. I want to talk about the perk system before it actually goes live, because I want to talk about why I think it's here, what are the greater purposes it serves, what are some of my concerns, and I do have plenty of concerns. I talked about a lot of those in that one video that I did. I'm going to try and bring up more specific things now that we know how they're implemented. But just in general, I am concerned about the optics of it. I am concerned about the balance of it. I think most of us are. We'll get there in a little bit, but let's talk about why I think this is the direction they went. First things first, it's definitely not Marvel Rivals. Marvel Rivals does not dictate what probably over a year of dev time would be for this, right? Because they're not going to be that reactionary. They're not going to be able to get all this stuff in the game to the polish that they need it to be in that time. This has definitely been in the works for a while. This is something that they've wanted to do for a while, and they're just now being able to implement it. It makes the game very fun, interesting, dynamic, varied, all of that different stuff, especially for a casual player, right? Overwatch, I think, in its beginning was always about like, oh, no one game played the same because of all the hero interactions and all the choices that you can make. And I think over the years since they've kind of brought that back, yes, it has gotten a lot better, more consistent in my opinion, but I think a lot of people yearn for the days where things were much more chaotic and extreme. Now, this is a way for them to kind of put that half and half, right? So there's a lot more chaos, but it's pretty controlled. The way that they've implemented the perks, I think, is really limited, honestly. Now, some of them are kind of broken, and we'll talk about a few examples, but for the most part, they are not going to be balls to the wall. You're not going to be getting them all the time, and honestly, it looks like it takes a little bit of time to even build up to the minor perk, let alone the major perk. So it's not going to be the entire game. You're going to feel like you're building towards something, especially if you swap and you have to kind of do it all over again. So I kind of want to go into my first point here about like why I think they actually added them outside of them just being fun and interesting. It really looks like it's addressing multiple concerns with counter swapping. The first thing about it, I think, is that perks help lower the weaknesses against certain comps and characters. I made an example on my podcast the other day where I was like, okay, well, a lot of people think that Orisa is weak against Zarya, even though I think that's a little overblown, but that could be a good example of one where if Ori is really struggling against Zarya, she can build the barrier instead and replace her ability that is the most susceptible to her. So while Zarya is still going to be pretty good against her, I mean, again, in theory, I don't know if I necessarily agree, she actually has a fighting shot trying to get back at that, right? Also, just generally being able to change your playstyle can go a long way, especially if you make it a little more general. You can have a lot better time against characters that would definitely be strong against you. There are a lot of benefits here to having different choices depending on what the other people pick. Now, at the same time, I think it's definitely possible that other characters are going to pick perks that make them better at doing the things that they were against you, to the point where there's a possibility where it doesn't really matter. That's just going to come with time. I'm not sure if that's necessarily the case, and it's not going to be the case in every scenario, since there are so many heroes with so many perks. So basically, you don't have to counter swap now because you have ways to get around it. So if you really just want to play your one hero and not feel like you have to go into some other thing, you can do that, right? Especially in a ladder setting where you don't have a team that can kind of help make up for it, at least consistently. If you're in ranked or pro play, you know, if I'm playing on a brig comp and I feel like I'm doing nothing on brig, well, I can't swap off that brig because the second I do, everybody dies. So that's what's going to happen. I'm going to play brig. So at least you can kind of feel a little better about it in that regard as well. Now, also not being able to keep your level between characters definitely disincentivizes you from swapping a little bit. There are ways to get your level back faster once you've swapped. It looks like when you do damage to characters who have more XP than you, there's some kind of like system where you get more XP depending on who you're shooting, right? So then you can get back up to those perks quicker, but you still don't have the perks for a while, especially the major perks, which are really going to matter because those are the super drastic changes to your gameplay. So if you wait too long in a match, you're going to have to go a while with being at less capacity until you can get back up to that power level. I think this is an interesting change. I think it's a good kind of roundabout way to do it where you're not completely discouraging swapping, you're not limiting swapping, but there is a way that is saying like, hey, there's going to be kind of a punishment to swap. Are you okay with that? I think that's a good way because a lot of people are saying we need to like limit swaps, and I say no, that's a terrible idea. Overwatch has never worked like that, and I don't think it ever should work like that. It feels really good to be able to have all that control. Now you still have control over it, you just have more options to weigh, and it feels like a better system in that regard about like, well, it's not just I'm going to pick the rock, paper, scissors thing. There's a lot more dynamics to it, and you have to keep in mind their perks, and you have to think about the perks that you're swapping into on that new character. There's a lot more to it than I think people give it credit for. You also have to remember that part of this is going to actually affect stalling. I'm just thinking about this right now. If you swap to a character, let's say I didn't play Tracer all game, but I really need to touch, I'm going to swap to Tracer to touch, and now I'm going to be super less powerful. So stalling might not be very good unless you start building up your stall characters with XP. Now, I don't know how viable that is, but if you start doing some fights on stall characters, now you shouldn't be playing for stall. You shouldn't be like planning to stall. What am I saying? What am I saying? Never mind. But in theory, if you started a match on Tracer and then you went, I think I really need a Sojourn here, you start building up that Sojourn and then you swap back to that Tracer to stall, well, now you actually have like a full Tracer. That honestly could be the difference, right? Tracer stalling with 6 blinks. That's something, you know what I mean? So that's just like a little micro thing. And I think there are going to be a lot of little micro details that we're going to start figuring out later, and that is going to be really interesting and fun at the end of the day. So in regards to swapping characters and everything, there's a lot more to it, and there's a lot more decision you have to make about swapping, not just your ult charge, but also your XP, and you have to think about everyone else's traits and your traits, and it's cool. I think it's interesting. Is it too much? Only time will tell. I don't think it's going to be the way that it's implemented. Again, it's very constrained, the implementation they have of these perks. There are not many of them. They come very infrequently. So yeah, I don't think that is necessarily going to be too much of a problem. Now, on the note of swapping perks is not a thing that you can do. And I think that kind of sucks because some of the perks are like pretty situational. Like I think about the Winston one where he does more damage to deployables. Now, I don't think you should ever take that, but if you were to take that, it might be viable against Sim, Torb, Ilyari, something like that if they've got so many of them. But once they swap off, then you're worthless and you're stuck on that perk. That is kind of an extreme example. I don't think most perks are that specific. The Torb one where you armor your tank, or you repair armor with the hammer. If your teammates swap up characters with armor, that's going to feel really bad. But basically, it sucks in some scenarios, but I totally get it because you don't want to have this like game where you're just like mid-match just swapping your perks mid-fight, like waiting, looking at what they're doing, trying to match their perks. Being able to swap your perks would just create too much chaos and too much uncertainty that getting rid of that entirely, I think, is absolutely the right choice. Like, it does suck, but I think the world where that isn't the case is way worse than the world that we're going to get. Regardless, though, even if you could swap, even if you couldn't swap regardless of how the UI is designed, it is always going to be hard to keep track of 20 perks in a game. You have to keep track of your perks, your teammates' perks, everyone else's perks on the other team. And even if there's a very insane, like nice, clean UI that we all agree is very good, keeping track of it is still going to be hard. Like, that is just a fact. So that's where I'm always, concerned, right? I want to be able to look at a character at a glance and know what they can do. But nowadays I have to start thinking about like, okay, they have this thing instead. So now I know that if I'm dueling a Tracer at this health pack and she hits the health pack, she's going to get another blink. So now I have to start preparing for that. But maybe the next game, Tracer gets the other one where her pulse bomb is bigger. And then it's like, oh God, okay, well now I have to try to distinguish that in my brain, and that is much easier said than done. I am only a human, right? So it is going to be very confusing for new people, but especially, I think, old people, right? Because new people are going to be learning about all of this at the same time, but all of us who have played the game for a while are going to now have to adjust to things being different. You're going to have to adjust to them being dynamic instead, and that is going to come with a really big learning curve. And while I think it's fine, I think learning new things is fun, and I think engaging with it is really cool, I am a little concerned. It's just a lot more stuff to digest, and while that's easier for old players in that regard, new players are going to struggle trying to know it all, right? In fact, many of them might not find it worth it to learn that kind of stuff because they don't even know what the heroes do at that point. So they kind of have to know what the abilities do first, and then they have to go, okay, now I got to learn 168 perks. That's a bit of a tough sell, I think. I don't know how you fix that. I don't know if you can fix that. The tooltips are going to do a lot to help with that, but they're not going to do everything, right? You have to be a little more intrinsically motivated to make sure that you learn all of the, I would say, relevant ones. So not all of them are going to be relevant, but I would say most of them are. You need to be able to distinguish what they are, and you need to know what they do, and that is going to be very, very tough. Another concern that I have is getting your perk mid-fight, because you kind of have to know, and I think that's actually kind of ingenious the way they've done it. If this just always assigned to a side, left or right, so that mid-fight you just hit one button and then you left or right, if you know which one is which, you can very quickly activate them on the fly. I think that's great. The problem is that how the fuck do I know when someone has activated their perk mid-fight? Am I supposed to check and just constantly check the scoreboard and be like, okay, I think they're close to their perk level, and now, okay, they have it. I wouldn't want to do that because I need to aim and I need to look at my teammates. So if there were some way visually to indicate that somebody has an available perk, and then maybe something else to indicate that they have just chosen that perk, I think that would go a really long way of kind of understanding how the power is spiking mid-match. To my knowledge, there is nothing like that right now, but if they just got like a slight glow and a slight release, or a slight like inhale, I guess, of that glow when they pick the perk, I think that would go a really long way to be like, okay, they have the perk, and especially if one of the perks is better than all the others, you're going to have to, you instantly know what is going to happen, right? You instantly know their power spike, and I think that would be really, really good if we could get something like that. Remember, this is a very fast-paced game. This is not like League of Legends, where you can kind of like, AFK, say, this is where I'm going, let me take the next 30 seconds and look at the scoreboard while my character is moving. This is all like, I'm piloting it at the entire game, right? And in mid-fight, when things are getting added, like, in Overwatch, you can just add perks mid-fight. In other MOBAs, you have to be at a certain position or a certain spot, so you never have to worry about that happening mid-fight. But in Overwatch, you do. So that is going to be a really tough problem to solve if they think it's a problem at all. I'm going to go ahead and say that I think it's going to be a problem and it's going to need to be addressed. That's my solution. I don't know what they think, but I would definitely take a look into that as soon as possible, Blizzard, if you watch this, I guess. Balancing is going to be whack, and we're going to have to live with that at least for one season. There are, again, 168 of these perks with more on the way. It's going to be very, very, very tough, right? I can already tell some of these perks are going to be way better than others. Not to say that I think a meta is going to develop right away, but, when Cass gets his rollback much quicker after hitting a headshot, I'm a little concerned. I'm a little concerned that one's going to be a little too good. 3 seconds off that cooldown, that's insane. That's kind of crazy. So yeah, we are going to have to live with that for a little bit of time. Hero bans will alleviate that when they come in Season 16. I'm hoping that the novelty of everything being new will outstay the frustration, because by the time Season 16 hits, hopefully if there are any super unbalanced, completely out there, unaddressed perks from balancing, then we can take it into our hands and get rid of it, and that's going to go a really long way. Now, the problem is that if it doesn't overstay the welcome, or sorry, it does overstay its welcome, then we're gonna have a problem, because I think it's gonna be really tough to get people to want to play the game if one of the characters on the battlefield is way better than all the others because their perk is broken. I really hope there are hot fixes on the way, and I really hope they might even have a bit of like a backlog of things like, hey, this one either sucks or is like way too broken, and fundamentally we were trying something and it realized it didn't work. We're replacing it with this one as our backup. You know what I mean? I think they might have a couple in the back, but I don't think they're going to be used for hotfixes. I would just really hope that they have a really like ready to go trigger, at least after a month, right? They might want to let it ride for a little bit, but like once we're getting to the end of the season, I'm going to need them to be a lot more aggressive when it comes to some of these patches, because I know there are going to be some that are going to be extremely annoying, right? Now, there's also something that I think is interesting to note about hero bans, is that I feel like we are not going to be getting a lot of reworks anymore. Why? Well, because you change a character's thing, an ability, how it works. Now you have to make sure that the perks all make sense and that they all work and also are all the same strength that they're supposed to be. So you can't just change a lot of how some of the interactions work or some of the properties of them without also making sure all the perks are good to go as well. It's a lot more work. So it feels like the perks are a way to get around having to rework everything, because again, reworks are a lot of time and effort and money being the biggest factor, right? So you add these perks, you balance these perks, you give them new stuff, you make them more interesting with the perks instead of having to completely redo everything. That makes a lot more sense to me, at least from a business standpoint and a time frame standpoint. So it's gonna be tough. I think we're gonna see a lot of perks get reworked before we see a lot of abilities get reworked. Even just properties about them being changed is gonna come with a lot of baggage. So the characters that we see right now, as we see them now, are probably here to stay. It's gonna be their perks that are gonna change a little bit, right? So I think that's really something to consider as we move forward over the months and the years, is that expect the number of hero reworks to go down by a considerable margin. Not that there really have been too many recently. Last year we only got 3, and I'm counting the ball one because sure, why not? So I would say that probably this year we're not going to get a hero rework in any capacity, if I had to guess. Another thing I wish, or at least I kind of thought would happen, is that role passives would go away with these. These kind of replacing role passives, a way to make up for your role's shortcomings. That is not really the case. Role passives are going to be here. I really wish that role passives get toned down, especially for tanks, but kind of get adjusted if possible. With all of these coming in, I doubt it. I think they want the game to feel a little more like you have a lot of power, but only to a small degree, right? It's not like a Marvel Rivals character. I think that's what they're going for, and getting rid of role passes would kind of even that out a little bit, so I understand the choice that they make here, but I don't quite know if I agree. I've heard something, and I don't think this is actually going to be the case, but there were like no balance changes in the build that the content creators played. If that is actually the case, if it ships, I'm going to be a little disappointed, because, you can still balance the heroes even with the perks. I don't want the perks to be the thing that we balance and we focus on for too long, because there are definitely a lot of things that do need to be addressed on the regular heroes side, not just from their perks. So, again, I get it. It's not the focus. General balance is not the focus of this patch, but it could definitely be in addition. I really hope that there is some kind of thought put into the general balance as well, because that is part of the experience, especially since it takes so long to get your minor perk. The neutral and like the first 2 or 3 minutes of the game are going to be played just like we have been playing them. Is that going to be enough difference to get a lot of people really fully invested in the game? Probably still, but like there is definitely something there to be said. Like there might be a game where you get steamrolled and you don't get a perk and it's just going to feel really bad. I'm not sure. I think they need to really keep a close eye on the balance and also how fast you really get these perks at the end of the day. And before I go into just very miscellaneous stuff, I want to say those are a lot of potential problems going forward. But again, I am skeptical, but I am at least a little optimistic. You know, I am excited to try all this stuff. Like I want to like reiterate that I am excited. Everything is going to be new. It's going to be fresh. There's going to be a lot of experimentation that we get to figure out as a community. And that is always just so much fun. You know, season 9, as you know, terribly it aged to most of us, was interesting. Seeing the meta develop in real time, you know, going from these Lucio Zen ball comps into something more stable and then, you know, it evolving from there. That was cool at the time. And the perk system is going to take a long time. I'm going to say over the course of a couple months, if that, to try and figure out what we can really do with these things and how to fully min-max everything about them. There are going to be things that slip through the cracks. There are going to be things that are super strong at the beginning, and we kind of have to roll with it, and that's kind of the fun part. So I am excited about it. I just wanted to point that out. Now, I do want to talk about, I'd say multiple things. I have one thing that's been bugging me for a couple of days since they revealed this. What are they doing with Echo Duplicate? Okay, hear me out. Does Echo duplicate your perks? Does she get the levels that you have? Does she have the levels that she has when she duplicates? Does she get any perks at all when she duplicates someone? You know what I'm saying here? You know what I mean? Like my guess is that you just get the perks that they have. But like if they are a second away from getting a perk, do I get all the XP that they had? Am I like completely duplicating it? Is there some kind of min-max with Echo where it's like I need to hold my dupe until they get their perk and pick it and then I get to go? What happens if, you know, I get all the XP they had? Do I get to pick a perk if I'm in Echo? I have no idea. I wanted to point that out. Nobody has said anything about this. It is concerning me. They have to have an answer, I'm sure. It's one of their extreme edge cases to make sure is working functional. But oh my God, I had to get this out here. Was this whole video an excuse to talk about Echo Duplicate? How does that work with the perk system? I will never tell my secrets. I am a magician, but just know that it has been bugging me for hours now, okay? But I think that does bring up a good point. There are probably a lot more hero interactions that we don't quite understand yet, and that is going to kind of show itself later. I think there are going to be exploits with the system that are hard to playtest and to figure out beforehand that we're going to have to like kind of hold on tight, because there's going to be some kind of exploit or something crazy where, you know, somebody might be super low. Like let's say a tank is like 2 health and they roll back to spawn, roll back like it's Ball, I guess. You know, that's probably a good example. Ball is like 2 health, he rolls back to spawn. I'm on support, I'm full on a character. I swap to a different character, heal them all the way up and get my perk level because they're, you know, a 3-star or 3 level and we're super late into the game. Then maybe I have an easy swap, or maybe I have a nice fallback or something like that. I don't know. That's another example of something that could be exploited and they might want to think about. Is that a good thing? Is that a bad thing? I don't know. I haven't played it. Have you played it? There's a very select few people who have played it, and if you have, let me know. Content creator. I'm just saying. In case you're here, in case you're curious. I don't know. I'm gonna jump in. I forgot about something. OWCS having hero perks right away is crazy to me. I understand that they're playing on the live client, but that is such a curveball in the round robin stage of OWCS where things are going to change drastically. I know for the most part teams are going to be relatively the same, but there's a lot of chaos that's going to ensue, and there might be some games that go a certain way and they definitely shouldn't have, and it's really more just because of knowledge gaps. I mean, they're only going to be able to practice with this stuff for 3 days, some less, before their games start. I think even like Japan and Korea play some of their games in the week. So they're going to have to play these games like instantly, right when the new stuff happens. And this isn't just like a balance patch. This is like the whole game swapping. You know what I mean? So that is something interesting. It doesn't really affect a lot of us, but all I'm saying is that you guys should watch OWCS this weekend. There's going to be a lot of crazy stuff happening. There's going to be a lot of crazy upsets, I'm sure. It's complete chaos. It's like 2020. That whole season of OWL was complete chaos. It was the first season I watched. I loved it. You never knew what was going to happen. You never knew if a team that only played 5 games was going to go steamroll a team that's played 12 games because of weird visa issues or something. I don't know. It was so fun. This is going to be the closest we've ever gotten to that in a while. Everything is going to be crazy. They're going to be showing off all these cool synergies and stuff, I'm sure. Take a look. It'll be fun. Is it competitive? Should they have done it? It's what we're getting, I guess. So it should be cool. I'm excited. I'm nervous. I have no idea what to think. I'm just excited to play Overwatch. If Overwatch season 15 wasn't happening on Tuesday, I would be playing Avowed and also just preparing mentally to play Monster Hunter next week. But we have season 18, so I'll be a little preoccupied while I wait for the rest of my life to happen. Anyways, I'm not going to ramble anymore. I think I'm done. Thank you guys so much for watching. Please like and subscribe, but also comment down below. What are you feeling right now? We're almost there. It's the dawn of the last day. It's going to happen, and we're just going to have to live with it for a while. I stream live, twitch.tv/Lane Hemingway. That's Tuesdays, Thursdays, and Saturdays. Please stop by, and if you want to know exactly when I'm live, my Discord down below will get you there. You can add the role Twitch, and down below as well, join my membership if you want a couple of extra videos where I just kind of ramble about stuff I don't think is really worth a whole full video on this channel for. Okay, thank you guys so much for watching. Please get some sleep, get a good night's rest, and get ready for the complete clusterfuck that is going to be with us tomorrow. All right, goodbye.